Aretha Franklin would not sing one note until the cash was in her hands. She kept it in her purse, on the piano, on the stage, where she could watch it the entire show. She learned early that promoters cheated singers, so she took her money first, counted it herself, and paid her own staff out of that same purse. No checks, no records, no taxes. For 60 years it worked, and that exact habit is what left the Queen of Soul owing the government $7.8 million when she died. Over the next 20 minutes, we will trace how the smartest self-protection in show business became the trap that swallowed her estate, turned her sons against each other, and ended with her last will found under a couch cushion. We are going to move through this in 3 parts. First, the habit, and why a woman who sold 75 million records trusted almost no one with $1. Second, the day she died, and the $4.1 million surprise that made no sense for someone that famous. And third, the war. The wills, the sons, the government, and the strange piece of paper that a jury in Detroit finally ruled on 5 years after she was gone. Stay with us, because the number at the center of this story is not what she made. It is what almost nothing of it reached the people she left behind. Let us start with the purse. If you worked a concert with Aretha Franklin, you learned the rule fast. She collected her fee before she performed, and she wanted it in cash. A reporter who spent time with her backstage in 2016 described stacks of bills sitting near her hairbrush in the dressing room as ordinary to her as a comb. When she walked out to sing, that money did not go into a safe. It went into her handbag, and the handbag went with her, right up onto the stage, set down on the piano where she could keep an eye on it while she played. At the Kennedy Center Honors in 2015, she gave the performance that brought President Obama to tears, singing Natural Woman in tribute to Carole King. And before she sat down, she tossed her sparkling clutch onto the piano top, the same thing she had done on 1,000 stages. Millions of people saw it as a charming quirk. It was not a quirk, it was policy. The reason went back decades, to an era when black artists were routinely robbed by white promoters and record men who knew the performers had no real way to fight back. Aretha watched it happen to people around her. The lesson she took was simple: get paid or get played. So she started collecting on the spot, every time, for the rest of her life. By 2010, it was written into her contracts. Documents that later surfaced showed a writer demanding promoters hand her $25,000 in cash, physically, directly, before she went on, with no one else authorized to receive it. Here is where the habit turned, because she did not just collect in cash. She operated in cash. She paid the people who worked for her out of that purse, in bills, off the books. Her longtime talent agent later described trying to get her to run payments through checks, so there would be a paper trail, a receipt, a record. There were no receipts. She deducted nothing. She recorded nothing. The same instinct that protected her from being cheated by a promoter meant that the most basic machinery of taxes, the part where you document what you paid and what you earned, simply did not exist in her world. For most of her life, that gap stayed invisible. But a habit like that does not stay invisible forever, because the Queen of Soul, one of the wealthiest and most decorated musicians alive, was quietly not paying her taxes. That brings us to part 2, the day she died, and the number that did not add up. Aretha Franklin died on August 16, 2018, at 76 years old, of pancreatic cancer, at home in Detroit. The tributes were instant and enormous. She was the first woman ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She had won 18 competitive Grammy Awards including the first 8 ever given for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance, a category she simply won every year. It existed at the start. She had placed more songs on the Billboard charts than any woman in history, over 100 of them. One estate expert who manages the legacies of other music legends estimated that everything she left behind could eventually be worth as much as $1 billion. And then the court documents started coming in, and the picture they painted looked nothing like $1 billion. When her assets were formally tallied, the number that appeared was $4.1 million. Cash and real estate, mostly. Her actual music catalog, the life's work valued in the hundreds of millions, was listed on the official inventory at around $1 million. The Queen of Soul, 75 million records sold, and on paper her estate was worth less than a single nice house in a lot of American cities. That low number is partly a story about how music catalogs get valued on paper versus what they actually earn over time. But it is also the first sign of a deeper problem, because that $4.1 million was already spoken for. And the entity standing at the front of the line was not family. It was the Internal Revenue Service. The government said Aretha Franklin owed roughly $7.8 million. Unpaid income taxes, plus penalties, plus interest, stacked up across years of that cash only. No records way of living. Reporting at the time indicated she had gone something like 7 years without properly paying, from around 2010 to 2017. Think about what that means next to the purse. Every night she collected her money first, in cash, and every night that money moved through her hands without a tax form attached. Multiply that across a career, across a payroll of staff paid in bills, and you do not get a scandal of greed. You get a slow, quiet accumulation of debt to the one institution that never forgets. And there is something almost unbelievable in how the government handled it. 7 years of unpaid taxes from one of the most famous people in the country, and the IRS never opened a criminal case against her. No fraud charges. The reason appears to be that she, or the people around her, kept acknowledging the debt, kept it in the category of money owed rather than money hidden. That distinction between a debt and a crime is the thin line she stayed on the right side of. But staying out of prison did not make the bill go away. It handed the whole mess to her 4 sons. And this is the part that should stop you. After she died, her music kept earning. The streams, the licensing, the sales, and then a major Hollywood biopic of her life released in 2021. Money kept flowing into the estate, but almost none of it flowed to her children. The government came first. A large share of every dollar the estate brought in was routed straight to the IRS and into tax escrow before her sons could touch a cent. Her own life's work, still producing, still valuable, and the earnings were going to settle a tax bill instead of reaching the family she left it to. We will get to exactly how that split was carved up, because the specific numbers are brutal. But first you need the other war that broke out the moment she was gone. Because Aretha Franklin, a woman who controlled every dollar with an iron grip, appeared to have died without a will at all. That is part 3. And it is where this goes from a money story to something stranger. When she died, the assumption was that there was no owing. For a woman this meticulous about cash, that seemed almost impossible, but nothing formal could be found. Under the law, that meant her estate would be split evenly among her 4 sons, with a court supervising. Her niece, Sabrina Owens, a university administrator, stepped in as the personal representative, the person who manages the estate. For months, that was the plan. Then, in May of 2019, Sabrina Owens was going through Aretha's home, and she found something. Not one document. 3 separate handwritten wills tucked away in different places in the house. One was from 2010, 11 pages, kept locked in a cabinet, more formal, even notarized. But another was dated 2014, and where it was found tells you everything about how this family was about to come apart. Those 4 pages were in a spiral notebook, and the spiral notebook was wedged underneath the cushions of the living room couch. The most valuable musical estate in America, and part of its fate was written in a notebook and stuffed into the sofa. There was even a 4th document, a 22-page typed will, unsigned, prepared with a law firm in the years before she died. Nobody knew which, if any, was the real final word of Aretha Franklin. And the 2 handwritten ones did not say the same thing. This is where the sons split into opposing camps. The 2010 will, the one locked in the cabinet, put conditions on the inheritance. It required 2 of her sons, Kekaf and Edward, to take business classes and earn a certificate or a degree before they could collect their share. Their mother, from beyond the grave, was telling them to go get an education first. The 2014 will, the one from the couch, erased that. It dropped the education requirement completely. It crossed out one son's name as an estate manager and put Kekaf in that role instead. And it gave Kekaf, along with her grandchildren, her main home in Bloomfield Hills, a property valued at over $1 million at the time, and worth considerably more now. So the fight was set. On one side, her son Ted White II, a musician who had played guitar in her own band, argued for the 2010 will, the locked and notarized one. On the other side, Kekaf and Edward backed the 2014 will, the one from the sofa that happened to treat them far more generously. 1 brother against 2. And the entire question of who got what came down to whether a jury would accept a crossed-out, hard-to-read notebook page as the true will of a woman worth a fortune. The argument against the notebook will was almost common sense. Ted White's attorney pointed out that the 2010 document was signed and notarized and treated like a serious legal instrument, while the 2014 pages were shoved under a couch cushion. If she really meant that to be her final will, surely she would have handled it with more care than tucking it into the furniture. But Michigan law had something to say about that. In Michigan, a handwritten will can be valid even without the usual formalities, as long as the important parts are in the person's own handwriting, and it is dated and signed. And Aretha had signed the 2014 notebook pages, not with a full, elegant signature. She had signed it with her name and a little smiley face drawn inside the letter A. That doodle, in a notebook under a couch cushion, was now a central piece of evidence in a multi-million-dollar case. The family did not go quietly. The infighting got bitter enough that Sabrina Owens, the niece who had found the wills in the first place, resigned as the person overseeing the estate, worn down by the conflict she had walked into. Kekaf accused the previous managers of mishandling things, down to a complaint that Owens had been driving one of Aretha's cars. The other side fired back that Kekaf had been happy to let the estate cover his expenses, including legal fees connected to a drunk driving arrest in 2019. This was not a dignified mourning. This was a household at war over a dead woman's money. Through all of it, one son stayed out of the fight entirely. Clarence, her eldest, lives with a disability and is under legal guardianship and assisted care. He was never a combatant in the will battle, because he was never in a position to be. And here is one thing both versions of the will actually agreed on. Both required that Clarence be provided for, that his brothers look after him. Whatever else the family fought over, the obligation to care for the son who could not fight for himself was written into every version. He is the quiet center this whole storm swirled around. Finally, on July 11, 2023, it went to a jury in Michigan. Nearly 5 years after Aretha Franklin died, 12 people were asked to decide which piece of paper counted. and they did not need long. In under an hour, the jury ruled that the 2014 will, the notebook from the couch with the smiley face signature, was the valid one. It revoked the older, locked-away version. The sofa won. Now let us go back to that tax arrangement, because you deserve the specific numbers, and they are the hardest part of the whole story. In early 2021, the estate reached a deal with the government to start clearing the $7.8 million debt. And the terms show you exactly where Aretha Franklin's music money was really going. Under that agreement, 45% of all revenue the estate earned went straight to the IRS to pay down the back taxes. Another 40% was set aside in escrow to cover taxes on new income. 15% went to the costs of administering the estate. Add that up. 85% of everything her catalog earned was going to taxes and overhead. And the sons. As part of that arrangement, each of her 4 children was to receive an initial payment of $50,000. Sit with the gap in that sentence. The estate of the Queen of Soul was pulling in an estimated $3 to $4 million a year from her music. Court and accounting records pointed to nearly $4 million in a single 12-month stretch, against close to $1 million in legal fees alone. Millions flowing in every year. And the children of the most awarded woman in the history of American music were looking at $50,000 each, while the government took its cut off the top. The debt was not cleared until June of 2022, almost 4 years after her death. For 4 years, the woman who insisted on being paid first, in cash, every single time, had a situation where her own heirs were paid last, while the institution she had quietly avoided for years stood at the very front of the line and collected. There is one more twist, and it cuts to the center of who she was as a businesswoman. Because it would be easy to hear this and think Aretha Franklin was naive about money. She was the opposite. She started her own music publishing companies. First one with her husband to publish her own compositions like Think and Rock Steady, and later another after her divorce. When she left her record label in 1978, she held on to ownership of some of her own master recordings, which was rare for an artist in that era. She understood, better than most performers of her time, that owning your work was where the real money lived. And yet, the system still found the gap. Consider her signature song, Respect, the record that defined her, her first #1, the anthem that made her the Queen of Soul. She did not write it. Otis Redding wrote and first recorded Respect in 1965, 2 years before her version. And under United States copyright law, for recordings made before 1972, radio stations paid royalties to the songwriter and the publisher, not to the performer. So every time her Respect played on the radio, and it has been estimated to have played around 7 million times, the royalty money went to Otis Redding and his estate, not to Aretha. The single most identifiable Aretha Franklin recording in existence generated radio royalties that flowed to a man who had died in a plane crash in 1967. So here is the woman we are actually left with, sharp enough to own her masters and run her own publishing houses, careful enough to demand every dollar in cash before she performed. And still, at the end, the law took the royalties on her biggest song. The tax code took millions from her estate, and a notebook under a couch nearly tore her family apart. She protected herself from every promoter who ever tried to cheat her. The one force she could not out-negotiate was the paperwork. Aretha Franklin sold 75 million records and stood at the summit of American music for 50 years. When she died, her documented estate was $4.1 million. The government said she owed nearly $8. and her 4 sons went to war over pages she left in the furniture. She spent a lifetime making sure she got paid first. And in the end, almost everyone got paid before the people she loved. If this changed how you see one of the greatest voices in history, take a second to subscribe, because we dig into the money stories behind the famous names that the headlines never finish telling. We have got more of these coming, and the next one will surprise you just as much.